that people can't look for it with their eye necessarily, because it was basically the least of all seeds at that very time that they were dealing with everyone. Right?
Yes, sir.
He said, but when it's grown, it is the greatest among herbs and become a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches of it. So we have to understand the process of the kingdom and understand that it is in a growing stage. Everyone looks for that end result, that great tree that all the birds and the nations come lodge in.
Yes.
But the seed growing, and in another place he said it grows up among the other trees unnoticed until it basically outshadowed them all. So this is a growing process. And basically what you read, and going back into their time, as this was being said, in one sense, it's what people want to hear, because it sounded like relief is coming.
Right.
But yet the relief was in its seed stage.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So, good stuff. Good stuff. Again, you got some more edification, put it in there. Because, only thing I can say, this is the whole movement it's a big thing. It's really a big thing. Luke, I was going to, yes, Luke 14. Seeing how Christ exposed these principalities and powers. But we went to Colossians to show how Paul was talking about being baptized in Messiah and putting off the rudiments of the world, putting off the philosophies and stuff and vain philosophies of the Roman world. And the Roman world was basically based in mercantilism. Okay? No caring for your neighbor. That's why, what Brother Zadok just finished breaking down, we see this clearly in the ministry of John the Baptist. And we're going to see it more as we follow the Master through this teaching. And, just an offshoot. The brother came preaching in Ephesus in the book of Acts. And they asked him, what baptism you been baptized with? He said, have you been baptized with the Holy Ghost? He said, the only baptism he know of is the baptism of John. So they, the brother got filled, the Spirit come upon him, he got filled with the Holy Ghost, and the book said he started to preach the way in Ephesus. And it said that he read in the scriptures proving to the people that Jesus was Christ, or that Jesus or Yeshua was Mashiach. And I think to myself, I said, well, all right, you go to some scriptures, Isaiah 53. Granted, that's fine. We want to talk about his crucifixion. That is what happened. No one could take that away. He said he shall be crucified. I'm not saying that's not a part of the mission or the teachings of these early apostles. But one thing I want to add with that is, how did the Messiah prove that he was the one? Remember, it was a lot of Jews being sacrificed and impaled on a Roman death sentences. You had many zealots all the time being crucified. What is to distinguish the Messiah then? How, not just that he was crucified, that's the end result, he was executed. But when John asked the same question, are you the one or should we look for another? He began to preach what? Tell John what you've seen. Tell John about the social justice which you've seen in the land and the villages and all of the towns of Judea. Go back and tell John how I done went among the lepers. I done went among the people where those who dressed in soft raiment wouldn't even want to come around because they stitched things. Go tell him I preach the gospel to the poor. Go and tell him the works that I have done. And this is how you preaching the Messiah, like that I brought before. Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 11. This servant which is to bring justice and equity in the earth. This is how they were looking for the Messiah. Not just he was impaled. But however, going back to this thing, I think it's needful for us, all of us who's praying, to be a part, and God willing, we're going to be a part of this movement, of this church that I know is going on. It's been going on before we was born. It's just an underground movement, though. You know what I mean? Ain't nothing on prime time. It's underground. It's going on in different places, in different areas, different countries. It's going on. It just arrived in our lockdown, and we got to respond. Okay? So, these are the principles. First, our masters being tried with, oh, if you be the Son of God, do this. It's almost like exaltation. That's how I understand exaltation. If anyone else had anything to add to it, add to it. I'm not saying what I see is just the end result of things. This is just one of the things that I see. This is what the Messiah began to preach. Luke 14:7. Notice this. Same principles. But he was tried. And we're going to be tried the same way. And notice this. Luke 14:7. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden. When he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying unto them, when thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. And he that bade thee, and him come and say to thee, give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit down in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, friend, go up higher. Then thou shalt have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. The Messiah couldn't turn at the bread to prove that I am the Son of God. No, it's a greater wisdom to prove whether you're the Son or not, or whether you even a disciple of the Son. And this is what he was doing to expose the principalities and powers. He is confronted first and foremost after the baptism. Again, the baptism representing now the Messiah starting a public ministry to confront the powers that be, to destroy that social order. Now he's confronted by the one who had the power to put these Romans in power anyway. He's confronted immediately by him. And one of the first things he's confronted with is, if you be the Son of God, do this. Messiah letting us know in his teachings to his disciples, you got to abase yourself. All right? Let's go further quickly. Let's go to Luke 18. Remember what he was saying, though. Whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humble himself shall be exalted. You take the lower room. Okay? And then the one who bade thee to the feast will come and exalt thee. This is a basic principle underlying in these Gospels. Paul going to get further into it. Luke 18:10. Luke 18:10. He's going to address it again. 2 men went up into the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee, the other a publican. So the one is a holy man. That Pharisee probably will proclaim that he is the Son of God too. All right? We know who the sons of God is. Everyone who claims to be a son of God, supposed to be followers of God. Most people say, I'm a child of God. You know, most people make this proclamation. So here, I'm sure the Pharisee would say the same thing. I'm the Son of God. I'm the Son of Elohim. So he going up to the temple. Another publican went up to the temple. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself. God, I thank thee that I'm not like as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, and even as this publican. I twice fast in a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. Oh, okay. So now you want to talk about your works as being to prove that you are what? A servant or son of Elohim. This was the same thing that Satan was trying to tempt Christ to do. Except his words was, turn these stones into bread. Man, you got some power. You're the Son of God. Prove this. Verse 13. And the publican standing afar off would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. See, one thing I'm coming to learn, exaltation. Well, privilege could bring exaltation. Sometimes exaltation, probably a person is doing that to get privilege. And privilege separates. Privilege destroys if it's not with the right heart. And it's really something really heavy in history. See, another sidebar, if you will. Forgive me. When you talk, because even when you're looking at this, one of the next scenes we're going to get into, God willing, as we follow the Messiah in his public ministry, we're going to get into racism. That's one of the first things he's going to address. The roots or the principles of racism. It wasn't racism then, it was separations of nations. Nowadays you got this hybrid of racism. But, you know, what created this? Privilege. See, at one time the poor whites were treated the same as poor blacks. And I come to find out that they revolted together. They got drunk together. They fled from the master together. And I have read in the records now that the higher elite decided that they needed to give the people, poor people in service in Europe, privilege. So they will not react harshly against them as the Indians or the Negroes would. See, it was privilege. And through privilege, they began to exalt themselves. And that led into exaltation. You know, and this began to divide people. Exaltation divides people. So the Messiah said, listen, don't exalt yourself. Now let's go to the next one to show you what I'm talking about how it divides people. Let's try Mark 10. Mark chapter 10. Yeah, God willing, we're going to be dealing with that too. It's some interesting records that I found that you will not find in some history books, in your school history books, on how these so-called founding fathers created the racism. They created the middle class to buffet against Indians and poor blacks and poor whites. They created also, you can say that middle class was created to gather an army against the rich folks in Britain. You know, and it's the same way today, this so-called middle class. You know, you got the middle class, they hate poor whites, they hate poor blacks. Because they receive some type of privilege, so they exalted themselves. You can't exalt yourself. If you get any kind of privilege, exaltation leads into separation. The Messiah was privileged in a sense. He's the Son of God. You can say that he was privileged, you can say. But he didn't exalt himself. There wasn't no room for it. Now, you got these 12 with him, his disciples with him. You're building a new society. And this society got to be knit together. Mark 10 and 35. Let's see if this is what I'm looking for. Yeah, this is it. Notice this. This is going on the same vibe here. Now, verse 35. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. You know, they must have felt they were relatively close to the master. Probably they felt they were relatively close than the rest of the 10 disciples, or 70 at this time, however. And they felt that they wanted some privileges. And he said unto them, what would ye that I should do for you? They said unto him, grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. Man. But Jesus said unto them, ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with? And they said unto him, we can. And Jesus said unto them, ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I'm baptized with